know, it's kind of depressing when things happen to you, when you go from being at the top and then you slowly drop.
We had everything, and all of a sudden it was all gone, and now what we're gonna do?
So during the time you were homeless, you lived in this seedy hotel, you lived in the Salvation Army for a while, and then you lived here in this cubicle. You slept here at night, sometimes in your car.
I went searching the streets, the lifestyle that he was living in. It was horrible.
Kind of an ugly situation. Maybe I get through all this and redeem myself.
David Vaughn III was a high school phenom. A McDonald's All-American, the 6'9" center chose to play his college ball for what was then the Memphis State Tigers. Vaughn scored 1,300 points in his Tigers career and pulled in just over 900 rebounds. Vaughn was at his best come tournament time. His stick back in the closing seconds against Purdue put the Tigers in the 1995 Sweet 16.
Garner had to let it rip. Vaughn put it up and in with 1-1 to go.
Making big shots was Vaughn's ticket to the NBA. He was the 25th pick by the Orlando Magic, joining former college teammate Penny Hardaway and Shaquille O'Neal. After 2 years with the Magic, he was traded, eventually ending up with the New Jersey Nets, where he had one of his most memorable moments, posted on YouTube for the world to see, as he blocked the shot of NBA Hall of Famer Michael Jordan.
Oh, he sent a message.
He looked me right in the eye and everything. After the game, he said, "You got me."
Vaughn says the only thing that stopped blocking MJ's shot was meeting his future wife, Brandy Brown, his last year with the Magic.
It was like love at first sight.
David and Brandy were living the good life. The Vaughns made nearly $3 million during David's professional career. David's agent, Kyle Rote Jr., says the riches of the NBA can be a dangerous trap.
As difficult as it is to get into pro sports, and it is very difficult, it's actually more difficult to get out. It's very similar to a drug addiction. Your identity gets wrapped up into who you are as an athlete. You get the best tables at restaurants. Everyone calls your name.
After a 4-year stint in Europe, the Vaughns came back to the States with 2 boys, a shrinking bank account, and the stark reality that professional basketball was over. A disastrous real estate deal didn't help. A contractor took them for a fortune on this Nashville home, and they were forced to move back to Orlando to live with Brandy's mother in her house. And David went to work, holding a number of jobs, including working in the warehouse of this furniture store. The stress of living paycheck to paycheck took its toll on the Vaughns' marriage.
Well, I think that he thought he would lose me because the money was running out.
Brandy says David would sink into periods of depression and sometimes violence.
I've kept up with David anytime he called the office, which he would occasionally just to kind of keep up. We went through some very difficult times of heavy depression in his life.
Rote says the Vaughn story is all too common in the NBA. 60% of NBA players go broke 5 years after leaving the league. 95% of the marriages end in divorce.
I've seen so many women abandon their guys. It was, the gravy train is now gone, and I need to latch on to somebody else.
Brandy Vaughn was determined she wouldn't become part of that statistic. But one last violent outburst made her take action.
The abuse had got pretty bad. I mean, it was occasions where, you know, I had a chandelier thrown at me, and, you know, that was at the part where I said, you know, that's it, I'm done with it. You know, just, I had to let go for a minute and let God deal with David.
Brandy filed a restraining order, and David was forced to move out. Initially, he stayed at the seedy motel.
It was pretty bad. You know, when I talked to David, he talked about the drug dealers, the prostitution, and he just said it was disgusting.
As cheap as the rates were, David could no longer afford this luxury. His hours at work were cut, and he was forced back to the streets in search of any place he could call home. Now homeless, David sought shelter anywhere he can find it. One of those places was right here at the Orlando Salvation Army, where thousands of fellow Orlando natives come to seek refuge.
I was here quite a bit. I would get a hot meal, be able to shower. It reminded me a lot of like growing up, like going to Boy Scouts. It's kind of like being in the campgrounds, but it's like for homeless people, you know. And I was thankful to get off the street, you know.
After a warm meal, David spent many nights in these bunks.
Being 6'9", it presented a problem a little bit, but I was able to curl up or whatever and try to sleep in the bed as best I could. The snoring, sometimes I had to get up and leave at the middle of the night because the guys be snoring too much. And I go sleep in my car sometimes, so kind of rough.
David would pick a parking lot and go to sleep.
My car was a safe haven for me. It prevented me from being homeless and being actually on the streets completely. Only the sheriff departments, like they would see me in the car and they would knock on the window and ask for my ID, and sometimes they tell me I had to move my car, but other than that.
Where would you go?
The next safe place I could find.
He knew he couldn't keep outmaneuvering the police, so David came up with another solution. He rented a mini storage unit to house his Chevy. Many nights he would simply pull his car into the tiny cubicle, shut the door, and go to sleep. How lonely was it?
Very lonely. If it wasn't for my faith in God and my trust in Him, I don't know what I would have done, you know.
Pamela Mitchell is the general manager of the storage facility. She remembers the first time she realized something wasn't quite right.
I kept seeing him kind of back up into an alcove, you know, as though he was trying to not be noticed necessarily. And so I initially called the Orange County Sheriff's deputies. The deputies come back out and says, "Oh, don't worry about it. That's David Vaughn. He's a former basketball player." And I'm like, "He can't stay here." "Well, he's coming out. He's coming out. We're bringing him out." I said, "Okay." And I went back upstairs and Googled him. And that's when I realized who David Vaughn was, because I didn't have a clue.
Mitchell says she and David developed an understanding. She told him as far as she knew, he wasn't staying at the storage unit, more or less keeping a blind eye on her 6'9" stowaway.
David sort of became another child, so to speak. He's not a talkative kind of person. He would never say that he was homeless or that he didn't have a place to stay. You just knew.
David was losing weight, losing hope, and missing his family. Did you want them back?
Yes, of course. I didn't want to go to the depths where there was no hope, and kept believing that at the end of this, I would still have my family back eventually.
He also noticed a disturbing problem on his left foot. An untreated spider bite had gotten horribly infected, so bad that amputation was very likely. David was hospitalized. Brandy remembers getting the call.
When he ended up in the hospital that day, and I had the opportunity, and I went up and took my husband back.
Yeah.
David says he woke up at the hospital and saw an angel.
She was there, right by my side, and it was like heaven on earth, you know, to see her again.
Brandy's commitment to David is obviously the linchpin here. I just have immense admiration for her, but for Brandy, David might not be alive today.
Thank you, Lord, for this food.
Today, after 7 months of being homeless, David Vaughn is back with his family, and he couldn't be happier.
You know, it's good to be around my children because I want to be a part of their lives, you know. Daddy love you.
Well, David is almost like the prodigal son. He took the money and he went off to the far land. He got himself into trouble, and to his credit, recognized that he made some mistakes, tried to be accountable for that.
I just kind of took things out on her, and it wasn't fair to her, and probably wasn't fair to my family, you know what I'm saying?
Love you.
I thank my wife for forgiving me and bringing me back home.
David, thankfully and hopefully, seems to be on the way back.
David and Brandy drive through the old neighborhood to reminisce about the good old days.
You miss this house? I do too.
The house is very much like they left it.
Man, I miss this place a lot. Sometimes I wish I had a big contract to say I could still stay here.
We'll
We'll
buy
it
if
from
we
you.
win the lottery.
But in a way, Vaughn feels like he's already won the lottery. He's back with his wife and kids. Simply happy to be a husband again, a father, there for his kids as they grow up. And maybe one day they'll play pro basketball like their dad and his dad before him.
Oh, I would love for them to play in the NBA, you know. We live in an NBA city, you know, and if they could be talented enough to make it, I'm all for it.